Felicitous greetings, fellow fanatics. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Fanatic, and today we're going to be taking a look at Golden Sun: The Lost Age, a classic JRPG for the Game Boy Advance by Camelot Software Planning. You may recall that a few months back I took a look at the first game, simply entitled Golden Sun. As this is a direct sequel, or you could even argue a standalone expansion, you may want to play that game first, or at the very least, watch my review of it. Consider this entire video to be one big spoiler for the second title. There will be no further spoiler warnings this time around. If you played the first Golden Sun, then you'll feel right at home with The Lost Age. Mechanically, very little has changed. First and foremost, there is the option to transfer the save data of a finished save file from the original game into The Lost Age. In order to do so, you can either use two Game Boy Advances with a link cable, or you can have Golden Sun generate a password for you to copy into the sequel. It was honestly a pain to get the link cable working on an emulator, so unless you already have the original hardware handy, I suggest just using the password. This is required to encounter a small number of events which are only triggered if you perform certain side quests within the first game, but they do unlock unique rewards. On the subject of side quests, there's a lot more optional content in The Lost Age than there was in its predecessor. Whereas side quests were scant and simplistic in Golden Sun, The Lost Age has multiple optional dungeons. And it's not just the side quests, there's simply a lot more game to be had here. My playthrough of Golden Sun took roughly 16 hours, whereas Lost Age took me about 30. That's nearly double the playtime. There really is more of everything. More towns to visit, more dungeons to explore, more characters to meet, more equipment to collect, more gene to find, more bosses to fight. Golden Sun was by no means a small game, but Lost Age just eclipses it in every way possible. Yes, I went there. As for new features, there are a few small ones of note. Firstly, you have several new summons. The basic ones are still capped at level 4, however, you can now learn special ones that require gene of multiple elements to trigger. You'll be able to find some of these early on that only require 2 gene to activate, but as the game goes on, you'll learn ones that completely outclass those from the first game, with some requiring 7, 8, 9, or even 13 gene to trigger. What's more, many of them aren't as straightforward. They do more than just damage. Some will inflict debuffs on your foes, some will heal, and one of them even attacks over the course of 2 rounds instead of happening all at once. Another addition to the game is a simple crafting system. You'll be able to find raw materials and rusty weapons throughout your journey. About a quarter to a third of the way along your journey, you'll come across a craftsman that can work with both of them. Raw materials randomly get remade into one of several items, while the rusty weapons always have the same result. Some of the game's most powerful weapons and armor can only be obtained this way, so make sure you don't pass up on the opportunity. And of course, now there's more gene, a total of 9 per character, and that means more classes. Every class line from the first game now has an additional rank, but that's not all. Throughout the game, you'll be able to find 3 special items that can change your character to a unique class line that's not obtainable in any other way. The Beast Tamer is especially fun as you'll be able to turn monsters against one another with it. But of course, the bulk of this video is going to be about the story. The game starts off with an opening crawl to recap the first title. After that, we jump to moments before the end of Golden Sun, where you take on the role of Jenna in the Venus Lighthouse just before it's lit. Nothing much is learned from the opening, but we do see the quake that sent a piece of the continent adrift, which you may recall was the post-credits scene we saw last time, where Jenna and Kraden find Felix and Sheba washed ashore. But apparently, things were still going too well for the group, as shortly after they're reunited, a massive tidal wave crashes into the drifting island and sends it hurtling into Indra, one of the southern continents of Weyard. It's here that the game begins proper, with the party exploring the world in search of a ship that they can use to travel the seas and eventually make their way to the Western Sea. As you may recall, the first game involved Isaac and his friends attempting to stop Soteros and Minardi of the Mars tribe from igniting the elemental lighthouses. Early on, they took Felix, Jenna, and Kraden hostage, and later Sheba along the way. However, when they were defeated atop of the Venus Lighthouse, Felix made clear his intentions to continue the quest to light remaining beacons despite his captors being dead. However, the remaining 2 lighthouses are inaccessible by land, so to that point and purpose, the group needs a new ship after the one that the Mars tribe had prepared was destroyed by the tidal wave. And a good chunk of the game is actually spent exploring the southern continents as the group searches for a ship. As with the first game, the story is more about world building and character interactions rather than having a complicated and intricate plot. That's not to say there aren't some twists and turns, but we'll get to those in a little bit. The first major plot point we have is Piers, a Mercury adept who has been imprisoned in the town of Madra after suspicion of being a pirate from Champa who recently raided the town. It's clear from his clothes that he's not from a mill, but the group is unable to talk to him while he's in prison to find out more of how he came to be there.
Just where did you say you were from?
Much farther than you've traveled, I'm sure.
From there, the party ventures about, both seeking to speak with the Elder Madra and searching for a ship. Both these purposes intertwine to lead them to Al-Hafra, where a ship has had its mast damaged by the tidal wave, but the hull is still completely intact. Unfortunately, another group has already purchased the vessel. While exploring the town and said ship, the group overhears the buyers talking and finds out that they are in fact the pirates from Champa. Their leader, Briggs, overhears the group as they're eavesdropping, and of course, this ends up leading to a fight between the two groups. After defeating the pirates, the party hands them over to the authorities, with the mayors of Al-Hafra and Madra apprehending the pirates. They come to an agreement that since the ship was bought with goods stolen from Madra, and they are in need of such a vessel, people of Madra would take control of the ship once it's repaired. Beyond that, in a surprising act of decency, Briggs confesses that Piers isn't one of his group. Thus, the mayor of Madra sends word ahead to free him immediately. But this still leaves our heroes without a ship, and by the time they return to Madra, Piers is already long gone. While he was imprisoned, a black orb he carried with him was confiscated, but in that time, Madra was raided again, this time by the Kibambo tribe to the west, and the orb was amongst the spoils pilfered. So naturally, it's time to head toward Kimbombo, where the tribe has taken the orb for the purposes of offering it to a massive idol in a ritual wherein the idol eats the orb. The group agrees to join with Piers and help him retrieve his orb, for which they have to venture inside of the idol. Talk about a deus ex machina. But a more important note is that we learn that Piers hails from Lemuria. With Kraden being a friend of Bobby, he wishes to see Piers' homeland. Piers is hesitant about that for the moment, but accepts their help in retrieving the orb. Once they have the orb in hand, Piers takes them back to his ship, but he informs them that there's a bit of a hiccup in their plan. While he is from Lemuria, he didn't leave by choice. The tidal wave washed him and his ship away, and he doesn't actually know how to get back to his homeland. Nevertheless, this is where the game really opens up, with a number of locales you can choose to explore, both mandatory and optional. You'll be able to explore most of the Great Eastern Sea, which gives you access to the islands and continents that surround it. You can even travel to the very ends of the Earth if you so choose.
It just ends, Captain! It's the edge of the world! Way up. It's flat.
There's a lot that can be done here in no particular order, but let's go over the parts that are most important to the plot. Firstly, you'll be able to come across Karst a couple of times and her compatriot, Agatio. They've joined up with Alex, with Karst being Minardi's sister, and seeking Isaac in order to avenge her death. For the time being, they just make some thinly veiled threats and leave. After all, they do have the same ultimate goal as Felix and the rest. Among other places, your travels will eventually bring you to Yalom, where the aforementioned blacksmith lives. But of greater importance to the plot is the field wherein the children play, singing songs to them left by a late sailor named Yep. The songs are set to the tune of the Japanese children's song Kagome Kagome. For those not familiar, think of something like Ring Around the Rosie or London Bridge is Falling Down, where children will play out motions while singing along. But the song and the game they play is actually a map to get through the Sea of Time, which leads to Lemuria. But you'll need more than just a map to reach your destination, as once you traverse the waves, you'll find the ancient city is protected by a great monster. You'll also need to gather 3 prongs to reforge the Trident of Ankol, which can then be used to destroy the barrier that protects Neptune. Once finally within Lemuria, it's here that the game's biggest plot twist is brought to light. It turns out that ever since alchemy was sealed away, the world has been rapidly decaying, with landmasses eroding bit by bit. Kraden already suspected such, which is why he's encouraged Felix and the others to remain on their quest in order to light the beacons even after Softros and Minardi fell. If something isn't done soon, all of Wayard's landmasses will drift into the waters below and then crumble off the sinking edges of Gaia's Falls. To this point in purpose, the Lemurian king gives them the Grindstone, which will allow the group to destroy the massive stone pillar that bars their way into the Great Western Sea, in allowing you to explore the last 2 major continents. Although the Jupiter Lighthouse lies on the southern continent, their first destination must be Hesperia, where you may recall that the Shaman's Rod was originally from. By presenting the rod to the place where it was forged, they obtain the Hover Jade, which is necessary to traverse the Jupiter Lighthouse. They then pass through Contigo and make their way into the lighthouse itself. As always, the climb is quite treacherous, but it's not the climb itself that's most important. As they make their way to the Aerie, they eventually hear the voices of Isaac and the others who have fallen into a trap set for them by Karst and Agatio. Despite their differences in viewpoints, Felix and Jenna know that they can't abandon their childhood friends, so they rush off to stop Agatio and Karst from killing them. Along the way, Alex heals the party just before they head into battle. If you take the time to have Sheba read his mind, you'll find that despite his conniving ways, he still does harbor some concern for his cousin Mia. Seeing themselves heavily outnumbered, and somewhat weak after fighting Isaac and Ivan, Karst and Agatio decide it would be best not to fight against Felix quite yet, although they do take the Mars Star from Isaac while he's down and out. Sheba and Jenna stay behind to help Isaac and the others recover, while Phoenix and Piers head to the top of the lighthouse in order to light the beacon. But once the Jupiter lighthouse shines at long last, Karst decides to betray Felix while the group is separated. This makes for a pretty interesting fight, as Jenna and Sheba rejoin you while you're in the middle of fighting. But eventually, they fall like any other foes. Alex once again intervenes, bringing the pair back from the brink of death and allowing them to retreat. Of course, now that the two parties have met at long last, it's time they finally confronted one another. Not in battle, but Isaac and his group do demand an explanation, so Kraden and the others tell them everything. They tell them about the landmasses shrinking without the power of alchemy to sustain them. They tell them about Felix and Jenna's parents being held captive by the Mars tribe, and they're not the only ones to have revelations to make. As they converse, Master Hamma arrives and also reveals the secret she was hiding in the first title. Isaac is her brother. But she's not here for a family reunion. Another, more pressing matter calls their attention. With 3 lighthouses lit and their power pouring into the world, the elements are out of balance. Without Mars' power of fire, the polar winds from the north are beginning to creep forward. Prox, the city where the Mars tribe hails from, was already situated in an icy waste, but now constant blizzards pelt the land. The two groups agree to travel together, and you can now use all 8 characters in battle. If your first 4 fall in a fight, you'll automatically switch to the second group, allowing you a second chance at victory. Upon reaching Prox, the group learns that Karst and Agatio have marched on ahead to the Mars Lighthouse, but despite this, no light shines from its beacon. Well, the leader of the Mars tribe has ordered that their captives be freed, but they seem to have vanished without a trace. Did they escape on their own? Regardless, they realize that now is not the time to quarrel. With the beacon unlit, the storms threaten to consume their village, and thus they grant Felix, Isaac, and the others passage to the lighthouse, each group putting past grievances behind them. After a long trek, they eventually make their way to a room where 2 dragons bar their path. But just as the 2-headed dragon was actually Satros and Minardi, so too were these dragons in fact Karst and Agatio, forced into these forms with the last of their strength and so blinded with fury that they forgot their mission. As the last warriors of the north die, Felix takes the Mars Star from them and the group heads to the Aerie. Upon climbing to the top, the group is stopped by none other than the Wise One, who does not wish to see alchemy unleashed upon the world. The Philosopher's Stone warns that Alex is ascending Mount Aleph even as they speak, with the intent of basking in the light of the golden sun as it rises upon the summit, in the belief that it will grant him ultimate power. The Wise One claims he cannot directly interfere with the actions of mankind, but calls forth a 3-headed dragon to stop them from lighting the beacon. I don't know, that still seems like pretty heavy interference if you ask me. Regardless, Kraden tries to warn them against fighting the dragon, but they have little choice at this point. A long, drawn-out battle ensues as the beast grows fiercer and angrier with each head that's severed, but eventually the heroes win out. But it's only after the dragon is finally defeated that they realize the truth of the matter. The dragon is in fact Isaac's father, as well as both of Felix and Jenna's parents, driven into a blind rage by the Wise One the same way that Karst and Agatio were. Everyone works together to try to heal them, but it seems to be fruitless. They have succeeded in their quest only to watch those they cared most about vanish from their lives. With a heavy heart, Felix tosses the Mars Star into the final beacon, and an outpouring of energy shakes the very foundations of Weyr. The Wise One warns people away from the lighthouses as the golden sun is about to rise, and beyond that, the lighting of the Mars lighthouse revives the hero's parents. As forewarned, Alex is upon Mount Aleph, but to much of his surprise, he only obtains semi-phenomenal, nearly cosmic power. The Wise One reveals that he imbued the Mars Star with some of the Golden Sun's power, thus giving it to Isaac. We then see the heroes return home, greeted by friends and family after their long journey, and thus ends the Lost Age. Of course, this leaves many questions unanswered, particularly centering around Isaac, Alex, and the Wise One. We had to wait 7 years thereafter for the release of Golden Sun Dark Dawn, and what did we finally learn when this game released? Absolutely nothing pertaining to these plot points. I may do a full review of this one someday, but for now, just know that I despise Dark Dawn with a passion. We're not through quite yet. Fact of the matter is that once you near the end of the Mars Lighthouse, you'll gain access to teleport. This is the last synergy that you'll learn in the game, and it opens up a handful of optional dungeons. Each of these grants access to one of the game's most powerful summons, although it's important to note that the greatest of them all is hidden within the Anemos Sanctum, which is locked further still. In order to enter therein, you'll need to find all 72 gene across both games. The Lost Stage does give you the opportunity to recover one of each element that you missed in the original title. This means you will still need to import a save file from Golden Sun if you desire to enter into this area in order to fight the game's hardest super boss. Yes, there is more than one super boss. All in all, The Lost Age should be viewed more as a standalone expansion to Golden Sun rather than a separate game. While it is fully playable on its own, you're missing a big chunk of the story, as well as missing out on the opportunity for a handful of items and events. Everything about it is a continuation of the first game, but bigger and grander. A larger world to explore, with a larger number of dungeons, and even individually, the dungeons tend to be a good bit larger than those in the first title. It doesn't do much to change the formula, it simply finishes up what its predecessor began. There is, however, one small complaint I do have about the sequel, and that's the fact that learning the game's strongest battle synergies will require a fair amount of grinding. I didn't grind it all in my playthrough of Golden Sun, but in The Lost Age I did end up spending a fair bit of time doing so. Still, just as Golden Sun is an excellent beginning of the tale, The Lost Age wraps things up rather nicely. It's effectively just being a larger and more refined part of the same title. I find Golden Sun The Lost Age to be worthy of a respectable 8.8 out of 10. But now for the bad news. There's currently no legitimate way to play Golden Sun or The Lost Age. While they were available on the Wii U's Virtual Console, Nintendo has recently shut down all payments for the system. All we can really do at this point is hope for a port or remake of these titles in the future. But what about you? What do you think of The Lost Age? What classic RPGs do you have nostalgia for? If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, leave them in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. And if you really enjoy my work, please consider funding my channel on Patreon. Until next time, farewell, fellow fanatics. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I've worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.